Well, welcome to another episode of Conversations and Connections, the official podcast of the Family Crisis Center of East Texas. I'm Stuart Burson, the prevention coordinator for the agency, and we are taking the mobile podcast studio on the road. I think this is only like the second time we've done this. We're actually here in the Baker Patillo Student Center on the campus of Stephen F. Austin State University. And June is Pride Month. And so what we decided to do is observe Pride Month and talk to some folks here on the SFA campus about what Pride Month means and just about issues going on in the LGBTQ plus community. So with me today, I have Megan Morton, who's the Director of Communications, and also I have Danial Gillis, and they're both with the SFA LGBTQ Equality Caucus, and I feel like I need to take a breath after I say all of that.
It is kind of a long name. Sometimes I get a little tired of saying it too.
Well, I appreciate both of you guys for coming on and doing this. It's really appreciated, and I thank you so much. And I guess first, and Danial, I forgot to ask before we started recording, do you have an official title with the caucus?
Yeah, I'm officially Director of Membership.
Okay.
Yeah.
Director of Membership. I need to remember. I was all about Megan, and
Yeah.
I completely forgot to ask you anything. So I guess first of all, let's just kind of start because I jokingly said that was a very long name. Can you give me a brief description of what the LGBTQ plus Equality Caucus, is all about? What do you guys do here on campus?
So the LGBTQ plus Equality Caucus is an SFA-based organization where we focus on LGBTQ plus initiatives on campus, participate in volunteerism events, just like the Safe Summer that we did with
Right,
y'all.
you guys were involved in the Safe Summer Break event that the Family Crisis Center along with the Serve Coalition did.
Right, and we also do social events as well, just to gather as a community and make sure that not only our voices are heard, but that we're visible within our SFA community, just to make everybody a little bit more comfortable.
Okay, excellent. So, one of the things that I've always have thought about, and I want to try to avoid stereotypes as much as I can, but what are some of the unique challenges members of the LGBTQ plus community face in rural East Texas? I don't know if it's as tough as what I think it may be. I don't know.
Well, Daniel and I were talking about it before we came in here, and we were just talking about how I don't necessarily think there's a whole lot of unique challenges rather than stuff that we all face together. Now, there are a few, like legislation and things like that. Of course, federally, we're able to get married, but it goes way deeper into that. One thing that I mentioned to Daniel is abortion rights. So that's a little bit deeper, because there are trans individuals who are able to conceive children. They may not be presenting as someone who can have children, but becoming pregnant and not being able to access that service after 6 weeks can be gender dysphoric for some individuals. Also, there was legislation that did not allow trans individuals to play sports, but that was kicked by, I believe, one of our legislators. It passed in Florida, unfortunately. But I guess not necessarily rural parts of Texas, but Texas as a whole and its laws. And then there's also different parts of, like, say, Austin is a more, quote, liberal place, but a lot of that is almost participation in gentrification in a way. Like, they still pass anti-homeless laws when a large amount of LGBTQ plus youth are homeless, or just LGBTQ plus individuals in general.
Right.
So there's specific laws that do affect us, and then of course there's always the people who are very vocal. I like to say the very vocal minority, because we do get a lot of positive and positivity.
Well, that's what I was wondering, and I guess that's why I was saying, I don't want to be stereotypical, and I may be wrong. There may be you may have a whole lot more support out in the community than I would think you might.
Right.
Being in, again, a rural area. Mm-hmm. Just because rural areas, I'm taking, are more going to be more conservative minded, and things like that.
Yes, 100%. And sometimes it can be a little bit discouraging. Like Pride Month is different for everybody. I know some people, they're like, oh, once Pride Month starts, it's like, yes, there's an uptick in positivity and pride, but there's also an uptick in people being very vocal about how they do not like Pride. And what are your experience with it, Daniel?
Daniel's been the strong, silent type so far, so.
Meg does love to talk. So there's that. Yeah, I think with it being Deep East Texas, it is really hard as an LGBT person, but I don't think that it is like a specific East Texas thing. I think it, I agree with Meg. It is something that we all face, but, definitely going to face a lot less if you live in like New York, compared to.
Well, and I even think, talking about Texas, I even think of like Houston, Dallas, Austin, right. Especially probably Austin. Mm-hmm. You're probably going to face less, what's the word, criticism? I don't know what the
right.
word might be than you would in other areas.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Even in the South, in the larger cities, compared to Nacogdoches, Carthage, that kind of area, if I go to like Houston or even like Memphis, which is like a conservative kind of area, like it's fine. Like I don't face any sort of discrimination or anything like that.
Okay.
But it is mostly in like those smaller communities where it's more conservative that you have those challenges.
Okay. Are y'all from this area?
I'm from Humble originally.
All right, we can talk later. I'm from Aldine.
Yeah.
Awesome. Nice. Okay. Megan, what about you?
I'm from the East Texas area. I'm from Trinidad, if you've heard of it.
I've heard of it.
Oh.
Now, if you gave me a map, I don't know if I could point to where it is, but I've heard of Trinidad.
Yes. It's kind of outside of Tyler.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, cool. What was it? And again, by all means, if you don't want to answer anything, you don't have to. But what was it like in Humble compared to Trent? Because Humble's almost, you might as well say Houston, right, in a way. Compared to Trinidad, what was it like growing up being LGBTQ? Did you feel comfortable identifying yourself that way in front of friends and family?
Definitely not my family, but just as the community as a whole. If you live in like Humble or, maybe Trinidad, there are places, like, it is definitely a place where you have more support because people don't really care. Like, they're not that much in your business.
Okay. As
it is in a smaller community. But when I was a kid, and I was very obviously, it was not like a moment where you're like, oh, maybe everybody knew. But yeah, it wasn't like, I didn't face any criticism. People were just like, okay, like they dealt with it.
Okay.
But I think if I grew up in like, like a smaller community compared to that, it would have been very different.
Well, my situation is just a little bit different. So I didn't grow up knowing. I recently came out, actually.
Okay. And that's fair enough.
There's actually a lot of later in life LGBTQ plus members just because of where they grew up.
Later in life, it makes you sound like you're 50 years old. I'm kidding you. I know what you mean, though. Go ahead.
So in Trinidad is very small. They have one school within Trinidad that I only went to in 4th grade. But then I moved on to Malakoff, which is the high school I went to. For example, if you want kind of an example of how they were stereotyped in that area, there's a school in Maybank High School. It was stereotyped that there were a lot of LGBTQ plus individuals there, and a lot of people who were within the school system, they would call it Gay Bank because there were a lot of LGBTQ individuals there. Daniel and I are laughing at that because, I mean, it honestly, it's a little bit funny, but it's just interesting to see the progression of some towns. A lot of people, like Daniel said, they just don't say anything. You know, they'd rather just get on about their business, drive 20 minutes to Walmart, and then come back home after their day trip to Walmart. Right. But it's definitely interesting to see progression. And Nacogdoches, despite what people think, they do have some little progressive niches in there. There's definitely a pretty large alt scene, and I say pretty large for us, you know. Then, of course, there is the Piney Woods Pride Coalition, which they are looking for executive members for their board. Otherwise, they haven't been having a whole lot of meetings. And then, of course, you have us, the LGBTQ plus Equality Caucus. Not only are we just examples for the university, but we also do some community outreach as well through, like I said, volunteerism, and I mean, even things like this podcast. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad you mentioned the other organizations, because that was going to be one of the questions I wanted to ask is, I know y'all are a campus organization. If someone wants to give y'all support, if they're not necessarily directly connected to the campus, what can they do? You know, or who can they go to?
Well, if they want to support us, one of the easiest and free ways to do that is to follow us on our social media. We always like words of kindness, and you know, sharing our events, because some of our events we do reach out to the community. Like this past semester, we had a Pride event that was open to the community. Quite a few non-SFA people did come and participate, and it was so much fun. We had not a costume contest, but a rainbow outfit contest, and we had drag performance. And also another one that we do is a big fundraiser of ours is the drag show that we do, which is so much fun. And it's so fulfilling and heartwarming to see not only SFA students being interested in our events, mm-hmm. but also members of the community and also faculty and staff. That's so important.
Cool.
So important.
So being SFA students, and we may have kind of in a way already answered this, but being SFA students, and again, the LGBTQ plus caucus is a campus organization, do you feel more at ease on campus or off campus? Because I know on campus, again, I may be generalizing a little bit, you'd think college campuses are probably going to be a little bit more liberal-minded. And so I'm wondering, what is it like on campus, mingling with your student peers on campus, and then going out off campus and facing the public?
I definitely, if you asked me this question before I was a part of the LGBTQ caucus, I would have said like off campus, totally.
Off campus,
yeah.
Feeling more comfortable?
Yes.
Really? Okay. I'm genuinely surprised.
Yeah. Well, the big part of that is that I am an agriculture major. Okay. I don't know if you've heard of the SFA agriculture department. I am not saying anything bad about them. I am just saying it is a very rural, like agribusiness, like animal science, that kind of thing. they are very geared toward like people who are from like rural communities who, you know, they're great people, but they might not be as accepting as like somebody who's, you know, from the biology department or something.
Right.
Like that. So definitely they did not make me feel that comfortable, you know, like being the way that I am. But when I found the LGBTQ caucus, it was more just like, oh, like these are people who are like me. So now, like, that I'm a part of this, I definitely feel more at ease on campus.
Cool.
And I would have to say, I would, just because of some experiences, or one experience specifically that I had in Lufkin, I was wearing a rainbow mask and was harassed, and I was walking with a friend who was a girl, and it just wasn't good.
Yeah.
People just saying like, oh, look at those lesbians, you know, and I'm like, dude, I'm not even lesbian, I'm bisexual, get it right, you know? But I would say on campus for me, because like you said, while campus is pretty conservative, there have recently been strides and steps taken to a more progressive campus, especially with the creation of our Equality Caucus. We're actually the only LGBTQ plus organization on campus so far. Of course, we always want more and more support with that, but I would say from my personal experience that campus is a little bit more welcoming than
Okay. All right. Do you think people who are in the LGBTQ community today, do you think they're better off than those in the community, say, 20 years ago or more? You know what I'm getting at? Do you think, as far as just acceptance and rights and the legal system and everything?
Definitely making strides in the past 20 years, but like more like locally, you know what I mean? Like in the United States, Canada, Great Britain, you know, like those places, those are pretty accepting, you know, but when you go to places like Uganda or India, they are not, say, better off than they were in the year 2001, you know? So definitely, as a whole, like on the earth, we still have some way to go, but I think like right now we are making, you know, progress as a community.
Okay. One of the things I want to talk to y'all about is some statistics from the CDC that they've put out, and I don't want to say I was surprised, because I don't think I was really surprised, but I find it just it's interesting, and just, you know, of course, when we talk about relationship violence, it makes me sad regardless. But for instance, according to these stats, 43.8% of lesbian women and 61.1% of bisexual women have reported rape, physical violence, and or stalking by intimate partner at some point in their lifetime, as opposed to just 35% of heterosexual women. And I'm not going to read all of these, but, you know, 26% of gay men and 37% of bisexual men have experienced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by intimate partner in their lifetime, in comparison to 29% of heterosexual men. And I guess my question is, I'm sure you have an opinion, why do you think the statistics are higher amongst the LGBTQ community when it comes to relationship violence than, say, the heterosexual community?
I think that has a lot to do with how our system works with doesn't work with the LGBTQ plus community. A lot of the times, same-sex violence is not even recognized just because it's not reported.
Sure.
For example, say there is a straight man in a workplace and a man is harassing that straight man. A lot of times that straight man won't even report it.
Oh, yeah, and that's something we talk about all the time in our line of work, that male victims of any type of relationship violence is probably way underreported.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Just because of you're afraid to lose, quote unquote, your masculinity card or whatever if you report that you've been a victim of sexual assault or any type of relationship violence.
Right. And then it also falls back on a general distrust of authority figures. Back in the day, I forgot what year, but it was after the Red Scare, they had what they called lavender panic. And that's whenever people started getting fired from their government jobs for being LGBTQ+. They started just really, it was almost like McCarthyism and how they really tried to weed out the communists within the government.
Okay.
They really started to weed out LGBTQ+ members within the working government. And then on top of that, police officers, they started hanging out around LGBTQ+ areas and soliciting sex workers or just waiting for people to advance on them. Even they weren't in uniform, they were, quote, undercover. And then these LGBTQ+ sex workers are just random people looking to have a good night out in the club. They were, and going back a little bit, these sex workers, they weren't necessarily wanting to do sex work. They were almost forced to do sex work because their families either figured out that they were LGBTQ+, and then they were kicked out, and then they were homeless, and then they couldn't find work because it was said in the paper that they were LGBTQ+, which did happen. People put that in the newspapers, that these members of the community were LGBTQ+, and of course they were shunned. They weren't hired anywhere,
right.
And they were homeless. They couldn't make any money, get a job, and then they were forced to go to sex work. And then they approached these people who they didn't know were police officers, or these police officers would even approach them. And sometimes they would go pretty far in checking out to see if they were a sex worker, if you know what I mean. And then all these clubs would be busted. These people would end up going to jail, and even like if they were trans, they weren't able to be put in the correct jail. And even after that, because of that, they were humiliated, they were abused in this system. They sometimes, even worse, they were raped or murdered within this system. So it really kind of all goes back to that, and that distrust of authority and feeling like they're not able to tell that authority. That's why there's so much discourse right now about police being at pride events or not, like large pride events. I could go way into this,
right?
But it all falls back on history and how we've previously been treated within the system, and not feeling comfortable enough to report.
Okay.
And then some people say, even within the partnership, one partner says, oh, if you get away from me, I will out you to your whole family. I will out you to your job. Or,
kind of blackmailing their partner, right?
Exactly.
Wow. So, in the prevention work that we do at the agency, we take the primary prevention approach. So we're going to talk to folks about things like the importance of consent and bystander intervention. And, we talk about combating the risk factors of gender socialization. So we'd always talk about toxic masculinity and objectification of women and male entitlement and things like that. How do these risk factors translate over to the LGBTQ community, do you think all those things are still just as present?
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Definitely there are, like we talk about consent and we talk about, things like that. There are definitely some bad people in the community. I'm not going to say that everybody is like great. We all need to be educated on these things. I think male entitlement and toxic masculinity is very present in the, especially the gay community towards men, because I don't really know how to say it. Like you go on a dating website, for example, and they'll just be openly racist to you. Okay. They'll be like, oh, no Asians, no Mexicans, only whites, only skinny people.
And you see, and again, this may be a stereotype from a heterosexual old white guy. But you would almost think, okay, if I'm part of the LGBT community, I would be accepting of, because you're already a part of a, and I'm always uncomfortable even saying an alternative lifestyle, because I don't think it should even be really labeled as alternative necessarily. But, you're part of this community that takes ridicule and that takes a lot of criticism, and then there you are saying, white people only, or no Asians, no blacks, and it's kind of contradicting itself, isn't it?
It's very weird. They do kind of drive, there's a stereotype about just in general, like Grindr or Tinder or whatever. And
I'm sorry, again, I just want to make sure these are dating apps or dating websites.
So,
okay.
On those specifically, because that's really where you really interact with gay men. If you're just trying to date, they'll exclude you for just no reason. They'll be like, "Oh, you're too fat," or something like that, and it's like, it's weird. It's just weird. So it's definitely in our community.
Right. So it's there. So, even though it's the LGBTQ community, you're still going to see amongst your peers the same things almost. You're going to see the toxic masculinity and things like that, male entitlement and stuff. So
and one thing that could be mentioned is just intersectionality in general. So a lot of people, they think that we all think and believe the same way, that we're very open and very just accepting, which, like Daniel said, it's not always true. One of the things that a lot of people stereotype white cisgender males with is that they are racist, like Daniel said, very selective. But going back to intersectionality, that's kind of where you can also be other types of people. So you're not just LGBTQ, you can also be black and also face the problems that black people face, and also face the problems that LGBTQ plus people face.
Right.
And then there's, of course, acceptance within the black community and acceptance within the, say, Hispanic or Latinx community. It's different than acceptance within the white community.
Right.
It's all about intersectionality and what you identify with.
So then I guess, really, if you have somebody who's a racial minority, on top of being part of the LGBT community, they may be getting it worse from their peers or whatever community they may be involved in.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
So I think we're just about getting close to wrapping this up. But one of the questions I wanted to ask both of you, what do you think of the media's portrayal of people in the LGBTQ community? And what I mean by media, the way people are portrayed in TV shows and movies and things like that. What are your thoughts?
When it comes to media, when I was a kid, there wasn't like anything. Maybe you watched Friends and you saw that Chandler had a, cross-dressing dad or something like that. Maybe you did that, but there wasn't much. Today, I think it's gotten a lot better. Like there are songwriters, songs, you can find them on Spotify. It's not like very, indie anymore.
Okay.
It's more like, it's mainstream. But with TV, there is very much the bury your gays trope. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that one to me.
Because I was like, But basically, it's a stereotype where if a TV show introduces a gay character, it's more of like to be like, oh, we have a gay character, and then immediately they're killed off like 2 episodes later. Or they have a bad ending, or they get AIDS, or they get, they just can't have a happy storyline. They have to have some kind of.
They can't be a normal person.
Right.
Something has to happen.
Right. Like it can't be just, this is a gay person and we're doing this. It always has to further like some kind of plot line.
Yeah.
They have to die, have cancer or something. Like it's very weird.
Right.
Megan?
I think, and this is something that I've studied a little bit. My undergrad is in mass communication. We talk about stereotypes in the media a lot and how that can really just further perpetuate negativity within any kind of community. But for us specifically, you either see the very flamboyant, very out, very just overemphasized, like we don't necessarily act like that.
Right.
There's some, of course, who do. More power to them. They're really fun. They sure get the party started. But not everybody is like that. And that is that can potentially be a negative stereotype in how straight people accept us. A lot of what you hear is like, why do you have to be so just open about it like that? Why do I have to be bombarded with gay relationships on this TV show that I watch? Recently, I did an Instagram takeover for SFA's Instagram, and one of the messages I got that I didn't publish because I didn't feel like it was a great message to publish, but somebody asked me, when are we going to stop publicly telling people who we like to have sex with? And I thought to myself, when you get married, are you just like forever a virgin after you get married? Because if you really think about it, straight marriage, obviously, or like if you have a baby, you obviously will not.
Something had to happen to make you come into the world.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm like, is being pregnant most of the time not a public announcement that you had sex with somebody? And I'm like, there's a whole lot to unpack there.
Well, and I think a lot of times also, a lot of times when you hear people, you're hearing this all the time now about, we're getting, like you said, bombarded. I think what it is, probably the same amount of gay people have always been in our community. It's just media is much more diverse now. When I was a kid, we had the 3 major networks, a couple of local channels, and that was it. Now, good grief, you got all these different media resources, and I just think it's people are just more comfortable now, I think, because it is being more accepted. So I think, LGBTQ folks, they were always out there, and it's the same amount. It's not like, well, it's hip, so I'm going to do this now. I think it's just the media's, we have more media outlets for people to express themselves, and I think people are getting more comfortable. Daniel, I like what you pointed out, and this was going to be one of the observations I was going to make, talking about the media portrayal. It seems like LGBTQ people are either played up for comedic purposes, kind of like what Megan said, the very flamboyant, over the top, or they're struck with tragedy. They got AIDS, or they're being discriminated against, and it's just such a tragic thing. And it may be, I think things may be better now, but and I guess that was my thoughts whenever I posed that question. Was it seems like it's either one extreme or the other, So
it would be very nice to have a TV show where they're just, hanging out, like not getting AIDS or dying or anything. That would be really cool. But
LGBTQ friends.
Yeah.
Or I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder how Will from Will and Grace is doing right now.
All right. Well, guys, thank y'all so much. I appreciate you coming on and being able to do this. And maybe at some point in the future, we can continue the conversation with some more pointed topics and things like that. But again, Megan Morton, Director of Communications, and Danial Gillis, the Director of Membership. Is that correct?
Yes.
With the SFA, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. The SFA LGBTQ plus Equality Caucus.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it so much. If you have any questions or comments about anything that we discussed on today's program, you can email us. That email address is conversationsandconnections@fccet.com. And also, I always like to point out, if you ever feel like you need our services, of course, the Family Crisis Center, we are accepting of all. And if you are in a dangerous relationship, or if you feel like you need our assistance for anything, we do have a toll-free 24-hour hotline. That number is 1-800-828-7233. That's 1-800-828-7233. And be sure and subscribe. We are available via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or the podcast service of your choice. So give us that subscribe. And as always, be the voice, if not for you, for someone else.